Welcome to Bridging the Gap, Law, Therapy, and Justice.
Hello and welcome to Bridging the Gap, Law, Therapy, and Justice with attorney and licensed marriage and family therapist, Caitlin R. Burgess. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist. Caitlin works where law and psychology meet, helping families, courts, and clinicians navigate high-conflict situations with clarity and care. In today's episode, we're talking about domestic violence and the legal system. Caitlin will explain how courts and therapists can work together to protect safety, promote accountability, and support recovery. Caitlin, thanks for being here.
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. It's nice to be here.
Absolutely. So you've seen domestic violence cases from both sides of the aisle. How does being trained in both law and therapy shape the way you look at these matters?
Yeah, that's a great question. I really feel it gives me a more integrated approach. So when you're acting as a lawyer, you're really focused on legal advocacy and client rights, evidence, legal definitions, who opposing counsel is, who the judge is, civil procedure. And when you are working as a therapist, is sort of a different approach. You're looking more holistically at these cases, sort of more empathically in my experience. And I think you're also looking at a client's, the full spectrum of the client's life and how their past experiences, even as a child or adolescent, have shaped who they are today. So in my experience and in my practice, I have found having the legal background and the psychological background really bridges the often siloed worlds between legal justice and psychological healing.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've heard other lawyers, especially family law lawyers, say, all right, I'm not a therapist, but, kind of a thing where, you're kind of, you're in a unique situation because you are truly both.
I am truly both. That's true. I have practiced law actually for almost probably 29 years, actually. I'm going to say
Wow.
that. Yeah, it's a long time.
Yeah.
And therapy now for a decade. So I have really found this integrative approach to be very helpful for my clients.
Absolutely, I'm sure. So when courts issue protective orders or custody restrictions, what are they typically hoping therapy will accomplish alongside those legal measures?
Yeah, so you do see, unfortunately, Kevin, a lot of domestic violence in the family courts. It is a big issue that comes up in these contested cases and puts a lot of stress on the family, on the children, and on the professionals involved, as well as, on the court, on the judge. So I think what they're really trying to do in maybe restricting custody sometimes when there's domestic violence, they're definitely prioritizing safety, and they're also prioritizing compliance. They want to make sure that the parties, including the individual who perpetrated the violence, as well as the individual who suffered from the violence, comply with the court orders. So the purpose of therapy, if we're dealing with someone who perpetrated the violence, you're really looking at accountability and compliance. And then the court is wanting to say, hey, if this individual is on supervised visits and complying with the court order, maybe some modifications and, gradually increasing custody if that's appropriate, is important. We're also focused on the power and control dynamics, and sort of sometimes when a court orders therapy for someone who's perpetrated domestic violence, they often are required to take court mandated batterer intervention program, which are classes. So that can go hand in hand with individual psychotherapy. When you're looking at the person who has experienced the domestic violence, the focus is on trauma recovery, I would say trauma recovery, empowerment, self care, and also prioritizing safety. And also for the children who have experienced domestic violence, you're prioritizing safety, their welfare, their health, and healing their broken relationships and just helping support children through a very difficult trauma recovery process.
Hmm. Oh, lot there for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what are some of the signs that you find might signify that a family is ready or perhaps not yet ready to introduce therapeutic intervention after violence has occurred?
Well, a sign that a family is ready. I mean, certainly if the court orders it, the court has determined they're ready, and we
Yeah,
must
yeah, they're ready then.
comply. Yeah, with the court orders. I take those court orders seriously, and
Sure.
my expectation is that the family will too, which is usually the case in my practice. So, um, how is a family ready? Well, so if it's mandated, the court's determined it's ready, and they are expecting compliance and participation. Uh, in that the litigants comply with the court orders, whether it's for the parents or the children. Compliance is really big. But sometimes I have clients coming into my office and they're not yet involved in the court system. Maybe there's been some incidences where CPS has come out for some reason and they're wanting to prioritize child welfare on a voluntary basis or prioritize their relationship if they're still married, and maybe one party has had an incident where they have engaged in abusive behavior. It doesn't always need to be physical abuse, sometimes it's psychological abuse.
Yep.
So they're ready if the court orders it and they're going to be complying with the court orders, or if they've decided we are not wanting this unhealthy dynamic in our relationship and we are going to be accountable and we're going to be honest and we're going to participate. So those would be signs that they're ready if the therapy is voluntary. Signs that they're not ready, Kevin, would be if there's ongoing abuse or if there's fear. Fear and abuse together would be a sign that maybe they need to separate, or maybe the perpetrator of abuse, sometimes both parties are abusing each other. Maybe they need some individual therapy before they can come back together and work with me in a dyad.
It's probably pretty easy for a survivor to sort of feel re-traumatized by the court process itself. It's not obviously an easy thing to go through, and then to have to kind of relive it all is it's got to be tough. What do you wish that more legal professionals understood about the emotional impact of litigation in these cases?
Yeah, that's such an important point, Kevin. I really think the legal process can be brutal for survivors of domestic violence because it really mimics the power and control dynamics that are often present in an abusive relationship. So
Yeah.
I think it's really important to understand that even simple procedural aspects of the litigation process, such as cross examination or looking at evidence, or even if a survivor has to go into the courtroom and their abuser is there as well, that can be incredibly traumatizing.
Absolutely.
So I think it's important that the professionals recognize that. You know, there are advocacy groups that will provide support services in the San Francisco Bay Area. Two that are coming to mind are Cora, Community Overcoming Relationship Abuse. I believe that is located in San Mateo County, as well as Next Door, Solutions to Domestic Violence. So they have victim advocates that can come in and they're trained and they can come in and support the survivor, which is hugely helpful.
When it comes to communication between the attorneys, the therapist, the court, I imagine it can get complicated when safety concerns are involved. How do you handle confidentiality while still giving the court useful information?
Another great question. So it depends what court I'm working with. If I'm working with mental health diversion programs through the criminal courts, they are pretty much requiring regular periodic reports from me, so they can determine how the person who is charged with the crime or who has been channeled into these programs is doing. So if we're dealing with the family court, uh, usually, often the therapy is confidential, but, that being said, sometimes it's non-confidential. So I think the courts can really appreciate that someone is in therapy. As long as I have a release of information, I can provide periodic court reports or even testify, which I do frequently. Without a release, I'm sometimes subpoenaed, and then I'll have to assert privilege. And then the court, if they determine, hey, we would like to hear from Miss Burgess, then they can order me to testify. And then sometimes the therapy is non-confidential. But generally, I'm finding the therapy is confidential. So then I would either need my client to sign off, sign a release, or sometimes I'm subpoenaed and the court will either tell me, hey, we don't want you to testify, or they'll order me to testify. And in that case, I will do so.
Do you find ever that the conflict becomes exaggerated as the legal process goes on?
Absolutely. And that is so unfortunate because all the research demonstrates that this type of conflict is so detrimental to the children involved. So, there are interventions that can help reduce conflict that I support and the court tends to support. Co-parenting counseling can be super helpful in keeping clients out of the court process, family therapy, even individual therapy, psychoeducation, parenting classes, co-parenting classes. There's some great books out there on communication models. Bill Eddy is really well known. He has a communication model called the BIF format: brief, informative, friendly, and firm. So there are all sorts of things that interventions and communication protocols, even platforms for communication. There's all sorts of platforms such as Our Family Wizard, Talking Parents, which can facilitate the parents communicating in a more collaborative, less hostile way, which is so important in these cases because the conflict is stressful on everybody. And then it also, it can cost a lot of money too, which is draining and stressful for the family. So we do everything we can as mental health professionals to reduce conflict, as does the court system.
How do you discern credible safety concerns from some of these situations that might get exaggerated?
Another great question. Yeah, you always, in court involved cases, things can kind of spiral. But it's really, I always prioritize safety in my work. I did that both as an attorney and as a therapist, mental health professional. That's my number one priority. So, I tend to look at objective verification and corroboration. So, police reports, restraining orders, CPS reports, and then, of course, if even if there aren't those third-party corroborating sources, the victim. If the victim is concerned, I take that very seriously, and so safety and safety planning is always a priority.
For perpetrators who are court ordered into counseling, what makes intervention effective or ineffective in your experience?
So I would say accountability. People definitely having self-awareness and accountability, and not in denial or not deflecting. That can be very helpful. Like I said before, these batter intervention programs that are court sanctioned can be wonderful. There are 52-week courses. There's 16 weeks courses. One program in particular is Parenting Without Violence in Santa Clara County. Super effective 16-week program. There's homework, there's a group format. I think classes in combination with therapy can be super beneficial for people.
Do you feel like that courts and mental health professionals can collaborate more intentionally throughout the legal process so it supports long-term healing rather than just resolving a case?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we have a very adversarial system of justice. So,
Yeah.
collaborative divorce is one avenue that people can seek out, where rather than going in and sort of into the courtroom and sort of duking it out, and everyone's trying to vilify the other person, and attorneys are involved and actively fighting. People are looking for sanctions, and it's just can be a big mess. I mean, I understand sometimes it's necessary, but collaborative divorce can be really helpful where there are releases to talk to both attorneys and we're trying to get everyone on the same page. I think, I do work in cases where I'm collaborating with both attorneys actively with appropriately signed releases, and that can really turn the decibel down on conflict and help us all understand each other's perspectives. So I do like to take a collaborative collaborative approach when I'm working in these cases, understanding that sometimes, unfortunately, the parties' positions are entrenched, and that's not always possible.
I feel like in recent years, I think it's everyone would agree is that we're more in tune with mental health. We're more thinking about emotional health. We're more like self-care you brought up. This kind of stuff is more in the forefront of society now. Are you seeing that give any sort of positive shift in these cases?
Well, I've been practicing for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So positive shift. Uh, yeah, I mean, we had COVID, and COVID sort of created a huge health crisis in this
True.
country and the world. So yeah, I think people are, I don't think the stigma is there anymore attached to mental health. I think people see mental health as vital to their overall health and well-being. And so I do see less of a stigma. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, my clients tend to come in and they're really working. They're working on self-care, they're working on mindfulness, coping strategies, seeking out support, just having another individual to bounce ideas back off. So I actually think there is less stigma.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure why that is, but I think it's a really positive trend.
I see you see more athletes and musicians and actors and stuff taking mental health breaks and stepping away and things like that. And they a lot of times they get kind of vilified at the time, or at least they get made fun of by some people. But in the end of the day, it really does seem to kind of shift the narrative a little bit within the society.
Yeah, I think it's great for people to have someone to speak to
Yeah,
confidentially. So I think there has been a shift, and I think that therapy can play an important role in people's lives, whether it's court involved or non-court involved.
absolutely. I agree. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for that. And thank you for joining us today on Bridging the Gap, Law, Therapy, and Justice with Caitlin Burgess. To learn more about Caitlin's interdisciplinary work connecting therapy and law, visit CaitlinBurgess.com. You'll find resources for families, attorneys, and mental health professionals involved in complex or high conflict cases. Thanks again for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave us a review. We really do appreciate it. Caitlin, I really enjoyed our conversation. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.